Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, the government could reopen before the end of the week. Democrats, however, have already signaled that they'll stick to their demands when funding runs out again in January. Will we see yet another shutdown? Luis Martinez on Capitol Hill. President Trump commemorating Veterans Day at Arlington National Cemetery while asserting his administration's peace through strength posture, and the president's thoughts on the bill to reopen the government. Mario Tsu at the White House. And America's veterans were also honored in New York City today. Dave Martin reports from Manhattan. An American aircraft carrier strike group arrives in Latin America as tensions with Venezuela continue to escalate. Arian Pazdar has the latest developments in that region. A suicide bomber blows himself up in Pakistan, killing at least 12 and injuring 27. Meanwhile, a former hostage held in Iraq explains how she was finally freed from captivity. Jason Perry with the details.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening and thank you for joining us tonight. The House of Representatives must vote on the bill to end the shutdown before the president can sign it into law and reopen the government. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has the details on the latest from Congress.
It's going to be good to get back on that floor tomorrow and vote for this continuing resolution, the same one basically that we voted on September 19th to fully fund the government. And now 3 appropriation bills that we have previously passed are going to be attached to that.
Congress is back in session for the first time in over a month, and the House of Representatives has teed up a vote on the amended continuing resolution passed by the Senate to reopen government. But the deal reached by Senate Republicans and Senate Democrats only punts the funding battle to the end of January 2026, and Democrats have not ruled out forcing another shutdown.
There's going to be another funding deadline come January 30th if this proposal goes through. If you don't get what you guys want on AC, are you willing to shut the government down again?
I mean, we're going to cross that bridge when we get to it. Right now, we're focused on dealing with the bill that's coming over from the Senate.
House Democrats have voiced their disappointment with Senate Democratic leadership and have signaled that they will reject the vote to reopen government.
Very frustrated with Schumer and the Republicans. What I heard from most of my colleagues is that we in the House want to stand strong. I mean, he's got 8 Democrats going rogue here. He himself voted against them, and that's not leadership. You know, that's not leadership at a time when we desperately need leadership to stand up to Donald Trump.
Speaker of the House Mike Johnson has not guaranteed that any deal to extend or reform the ACA healthcare subsidies that has reached in the Senate will receive a vote on the House of Representatives.
Look, we're going to do in the House what we always do. That is a deliberative process. I mean, we have to find consensus on whatever the proposal is. As you know, I do not guarantee the outcome of legislation.
Democrats are already mulling over their strategy and demands for the upcoming funding battle in January 2026.
And we need to have strategic decision-making as a caucus in both the House and the Senate, which is to say, when we align on our asks for the January funding deadline, they need to be things that are impactful for the middle class, and they need to be deliverable.
Speaker of the House Mike Johnson will need all Republicans in the House of Representatives to vote to reopen government or rely on a few Democrats to join Republicans in order to end the shutdown. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
A Utah judge has rejected a new congressional map drawn by Republican lawmakers. The judge instead approved a plan that creates a Democrat-leaning district ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. Republicans currently hold all 4 of Utah's U.S. House seats and proposed a map designed to protect them. Judge Diana Gibson ruled the GOP plan unduly favors Republicans and disfavors Democrats. She selected a map submitted by plaintiffs, including the League of Women Voters of Utah. The map keeps Salt Lake County largely in one district, rather than splitting the heavily Democratic area across all 4. The ruling gives Democrats a stronger chance to flip a seat in a state that has not elected a Democrat to Congress since early 2021. President Trump laying a wreath in an Arlington National Cemetery ceremony and commemorating the sacrifices of American veterans, and the president proclaiming Veterans Day Victory Day for World War I. We now go live to NTD's Washington correspondent Mario Tsu, who's at the White House. Good evening, Mari. How is President Trump spending this Veterans Day?
Tiff, good evening. Yes, today in honor of Veterans Day, President Trump was in Virginia at a ceremony where he laid a wreath and he paid tribute to American veterans throughout history, from the Civil War to World War II and Vietnam. President Trump also touted his administration's recent rebrand of the Department of the Defense to the Department of War and vowed to restore what he calls the, quote, winning spirit of the U.S. military. President Trump also touts his administration's initiatives to combat veteran homelessness, highlighting specifically an executive order that he signed over the summer that will create a facility to house 6,000 homeless veterans by 2028. Take a look at his remarks.
Generation after generation, America's warriors have left behind the comforts of home and family to face violence, evil, and death so that our families could know joy, goodness, and peace. To every veteran, we love our veterans. Thank you for your service. Thank you very much.
President Trump laying a wreath on the tomb of the unknown soldier at Arlington National Cemetery and thanking American veterans.
We honor those who have worn the uniform, who have borne the battle that has defended our freedom for 250 years.
And Vice President J.D. Vance, himself a former Marine, says America's most important natural resource is its young service people.
That is a resource we must protect. Our sacred responsibility to our veterans is to make sure that the American military is the bravest and best fighting force anywhere in the world.
This, while President Trump declares,
but it's my proclamation that we are now going to be saying and calling Victory Day for World War I.
Touting his administration for bringing back what the Department of War Secretary Pete Hegseth has called the warrior ethos.
So we're not going to be politically correct anymore. From now on, when we fight a war, we only fight for one reason: to win. We fight to win.
Meanwhile, President Trump congratulates House Speaker Mike Johnson on the Senate's passage of a short-term spending bill to reopen the government.
Congratulations to you and to John and to everybody on a very big victory. We're opening up our country. Should have never been closed. Should have never been closed.
And expresses confidence in the bill's final passage in a surprise appearance on ESPN.
So the House is going to vote, and I think they're going to vote positively. I think most people want to see it open. Only people that hate our country want to see it not open.
The majority of the ESPN interview, though, was about the role of sports in President Trump's political life. And President Trump indeed doubles down on his criticism of the NFL's new kickoff, which was adopted just last season in an effort to reduce injuries. President Trump calls it both unromantic and demeaning. Tiff, back to you.
All right, Mari, thanks for those updates. Tensions continue to rise between the U.S. and Venezuela. An American aircraft carrier strike group arrived in Latin American waters today. At the same time, Venezuela is carrying out military drills. NTD's international correspondent, Arian Pazdar, has the latest on Venezuela.
A U.S. aircraft carrier strike group arrived in Latin America on Tuesday. Washington sent the USS Gerald R. Ford, which is the world's largest aircraft carrier. According to the Pentagon, its presence will bolster U.S. capacity to detect, monitor, and disrupt illicit actors and activities that compromise the safety and prosperity of the United States homeland and our security in the Western Hemisphere. As tensions keep rising, Venezuela is carrying out new military exercises. The country's government released this footage showing the troops preparing for conflict. Venezuela's government says the drill aims to boost the nation's independence. And Secretary of War Pete Hegseth says the U.S. struck another narco ship on its way to the U.S. According to Hegseth, these vessels were known by our intelligence to be associated with illicit narcotic smuggling, were carrying narcotics, and were transiting along a known narco-trafficking transit route. He added that all traffickers were killed in the attack, while no U.S. forces were hurt. Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
Also on the topic of illicit drugs, China is now promising export controls on fentanyl precursors. Is this a sign President Trump's tariff deal is working, and will China actually follow through? Tonight on Capitol Report, hear from Riley Walters at 7 p.m. Eastern Time here on NTD. Coming up, the Department of Homeland Security says that Chicago ICE operations aren't going anywhere after reports of an operations commander leaving the area. Jason Blair has the update. Clashes erupted on Monday at UC Berkeley as protesters tried to shut down a Turning Point USA event. Now the Department of Justice is investigating. And more than 120,000 victims, $6 billion in Bitcoin, and now 11 years behind bars. A Chinese woman who ran a massive crypto Ponzi scheme fled to London to launder the money and live lavishly. Malcolm Hudson brings us the latest in that case when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. In Pakistan, at least 12 people were killed and 27 wounded when a suicide bomber blew himself up in the country's capital. And in another development, a former hostage who was held in Iraq says President Trump's ultimatum helped free her from captivity. NTD's Jason Perry has the details and a warning. This report includes content that some viewers may find disturbing.
Screams were heard in Pakistan on Tuesday after a suicide bomber blew himself up near a courthouse in the country's capital of Islamabad. The explosion happened around lunchtime, and Pakistan's Minister of Interior said that at least 12 people were killed and 27 wounded. And he explained the moment before the person blew himself up.
The suspect stood there for 15 minutes. He even tried to enter the court premises, but failing to do so, targeted a police vehicle.
Another resident gave more details of what happened after that.
Parts of the suicide bomber's body flew into the courthouse. It was a huge explosion and people started to run. It resulted in chaos. It seemed like a scene from the Day of Judgment.
Pakistani officials accused neighboring Afghanistan of being complicit in the bombing and said they would retaliate if Kabul does not rein in the terrorists that Pakistan says were responsible. Afghanistan has denied the accusations, and the Taliban administration condemned the bombing. And in another development, an Israeli-Russian student explained how she was kidnapped by the Kataib Hezbollah terrorist group while she was on a research trip in Iraq.
Basically was dragged into an SUV by maybe two men who were basically grabbing me into the car. I resisted and I screamed, and they were passing through checkpoints. They were whispering to each other, Saitara, Saitara, checkpoint, checkpoint. So I knew, obviously, that they're not the state.
And she was held captive and tortured for over 2 years until, she said, President Trump sent an Iraqi-American, Mark Savaya, to Iraq with a message for the prime minister that said Trump was upset.
He basically made this ultimatum. You have to release Elizabeth within a week or we will bomb you. And the threat was incredibly effective because a week later I was released.
Meanwhile, in Israel, a former hostage, Hadar Golden, whose body was held in the Gaza Strip for over a decade, was finally buried after the Hamas terrorist group released his body. Golden's mother said this.
I truly have no explanation for how we did it, except that in every moment when we almost sank, there was someone in the family who would jump up and say, "But what would Hadar say?"
And the Israeli military blew up the tunnel from which Golden was kidnapped 11 years ago. Jason Perry, NTD News.
Assistant Homeland Security Secretary Tricia McLaughlin says that immigration enforcement efforts are not stopping in Chicago. Her comment comes in response to reports that the operations commander for Operation Midway Blitz will be leaving the area. NTD correspondent Jason Blair reports.
Assistant Homeland Security Secretary Tricia McLaughlin assures that the department is not stopping operations in Chicago. This is in response to reports that Border Patrol Commander Greg Bovino will be exiting the Chicago area. Bovino has been one of the main names and faces at the head of immigration efforts in Illinois. McLaughlin writes, "We aren't leaving Chicago. Since the start of Operation Midway Blitz, homicides are down 16%, shootings 35%, robberies 41%, and carjackings 48%. Multiple outlets have reported that Bovino and his team are set to leave the Chicago area as soon as this week, citing unnamed sources. However, the DHS has not officially confirmed this yet. Bovino has been the target of an alleged gang member in Illinois who was charged with putting a bounty on Bovino. Bovino is also facing lawsuits claiming he used aggressive tactics during immigration enforcement efforts in the state. NTD has reached out to the DHS for comment. And Customs and Border Patrol announces that retired agents and officers are welcome to rejoin their ranks. The department is offering double pay for eligible personnel, the CBP says in a statement. Through a dual compensation waiver, eligible retirees can receive their full annuity plus full salary, no reductions, no offsets. It's not just about filling positions, it's about bringing back experience, leadership, and legacy. The positions are full-time term appointments. Most will last from 1 to 4 years with possible extensions, according to the statement. CBP says interested applicants need to have been retired for at least 1 year. Jason Blair, NTD News.
The Department of Justice announced today that it will investigate local security at the UC Berkeley campus after clashes broke out at a Turning Point USA event on Monday. An assistant attorney general is questioning Antifa's role in the incidents. NTD's Arlene Richards has the details.
The Department of Justice on Tuesday announced it will begin an investigation into local security at UC Berkeley. This comes after a Frontlines TPUSA video posted on X showed violent protests at a Turning Point USA event on Monday. Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon responded to the post of Nick Sorter, an independent reporter who said, quote, Antifa has turned Turning Point's event at UC Berkeley in California into an absolute war zone. The event was Turning Point USA's first event in California since Charlie Kirk, the group's founder, was shot and killed in September. It was also the group's final stop on its American comeback tour. Sorter said in his post, quote, munitions are being lit on fire by Antifa while attendees are rushed into the venue. Dillon said in her own post that her department, Civil Rights, will investigate what happened here, and I see several issues of serious concern regarding campus and local security and Antifa's ability to operate with impunity in California. A large group of protesters appeared Monday afternoon outside the conservative group's event chanting, hey ho, Turning Point has to go. Organizers said Antifa thugs stormed the sold-out event. Protesters wearing Middle Eastern-style turbans and scarves clashed with police and attendees, leaving some covered in blood. Mikey McCoy, TPUSA Chief of Staff, said in an X post on Monday as the clash unfolded, quote, Antifa is breaking through police barricades and threatening our event attendees. Attorney General Pam Bondi said in an X post this afternoon that Antifa is an existential threat. She said, quote, the violent riots at UC Berkeley last night are under full investigation by the FBI-led Joint Terrorism Task Force. We will continue to spare no expense unmasking all who commit and orchestrate acts of political violence. Antifa, which is short for anti-fascist, is characterized as a movement by some, but President Trump signed an order in September declaring them a terrorist group. The name Antifa is applied to factions of black-clad leftists or anarchists who show up at protests opposing the police or the government. Despite the chaotic scenes outside, organizers said the hours-long event was not disturbed inside. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon has sent a letter to UC Berkeley police about the investigation and has asked them to preserve their records regarding the incident. A Chinese woman in Britain is jailed for 11 years for masterminding a massive cryptocurrency Ponzi scheme. She defrauded more than 120,000 victims, storing the proceeds in what is now $6 billion worth of Bitcoin. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more.
A Chinese fraudster has been jailed for over 11 years in Britain after masterminding a scam that led UK police to make the world's largest ever cryptocurrency seizure. 47-year-old Simin Qian defrauded nearly 130,000 victims in China through a Ponzi scheme before fleeing to the UK as an international fugitive.
As part of this investigation, we seized over 61,000 Bitcoin, now worth approximately £5 billion. Alongside other non-crypto assets valued at more than £20 million.
61,000 Bitcoin is now worth more than $6.3 billion. Qian, also known as Yadi Zhang, was eventually arrested in 2024 after spending nearly 6 years at large. Prosecutors said she spent years evading UK police by sightseeing across Europe, staying in upmarket hotels and living a life of luxury. As seen here, she lured victims with glossy promotional videos and promises of massive returns. This clip, called Britain Nice Life, featured sweeping shots of London. She defrauded more than 128,000 victims between 2014 and 2017. Chan eventually came to the attention of Chinese authorities, prompting her to flee the country before eventually arriving in the UK in September 2017.
Many people lost their life savings, and the emotional and financial impact on them was devastating. Today's outcome is a step towards justice for those victims.
Chan was sentenced to 11 years and 8 months after previously admitting money laundering offences and transferring and possessing criminal property, namely cryptocurrency. Her accomplice, 47-year-old Sen Hock Ling, was also sentenced to 4 years and 11 months in prison after pleading guilty to transferring criminal property over his role in the multi-billion-dollar fraud. More than 80 people were convicted in China in connection with the scheme. Head of Serious Economic Organized Crime Prosecution, Neil Colville, said the sentencing is a culmination of many years of complex and detailed work.
Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are increasingly being used by organized criminals to disguise and transfer assets so that fraudsters may enjoy the benefits of their criminal conduct.
There are ongoing proceedings over the fate of the seized Bitcoin and how the victims of the fraud will be repaid. British prosecutors are considering a compensation scheme for victims, some of whom say they want the Bitcoin itself. Any proceeds of crime money left over after this process would normally default to the UK government. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News, UK.
Coming up on Veterans Day, how can we learn more to fully understand and appreciate those who serve, and what more can be done to help them? Two veterans join us to discuss when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer in New York City. Today, thousands of military veterans were celebrated as the nation commemorates the 250th anniversary of our armed forces. NTD's Dave Martin has the report.
I'm here at the 106th Annual Veterans Day Parade here in New York City, asking veterans what this day means to them.
Yeah, Veterans Day is a day for us veterans. We serve the country. That's what veterans do, serve our country, give up our lives, to sign a check on that dotted line and stuff, we're up to our lives. That's what Veterans Day is for me.
All my friends that I have lost over the years, I served from 1970 to 1976 in the United States Army, and later on I rejoined the Army at the end of 1976, keep alive all those that did not make it, and that's why I continue to serve. I'm a member of the American Legion for 45 years.
Veterans Day has always been special to me. I'm the sixth New Yorker, native New Yorker, to actually wear a uniform in my family, and we all went to wars going back to World War I. So it's always been special, that family connection with me. And then again, we always say it's not just a parade, it is the largest veterans reunion in the country. And it's iconic to be here on Fifth Avenue every year, no matter what the weather is.
So on this day, New York City honors those veterans who've served our country and thanks them for all they've done. This is Dave Martin for NTD News.
And what does Veterans Day mean to citizens from across the country? NTD's Sam Wong was out on the streets of Las Vegas to hear from the people.
What does Veterans Day mean to you?
It means honoring the men that served our country to keep our freedoms as they are.
We're enjoying the day off today, but a lot of that is stemmed from the freedoms we have because of our veterans and what they sacrificed.
I have friends that went to Vietnam and many of them didn't come back. The whole country should be celebrating not just one day out of a year, but throughout the year for their contributions.
I have a sister that's a veteran. She's a nurse, Navy nurse. She's seen tsunamis and children that are, rescuing children that were dead and things like that. They see a lot of things that we as normal people don't see.
Amidst all the political divisions, do you think this idea of honoring our troops has been politicized a little bit?
Yes, I believe it does, but it still shouldn't take away from what the real meaning is.
If I had to say anything about it, that's what I'd say is people need to be more grateful for what they have and what others sacrificed for what we do have.
I think that Veterans Day should be more about the independent human being, what they're really looking for when they put service with the government, you know, that psychological pain that gets put on them. Deserves a lot more than what our government gives them.
Do you happen to know anybody around you who have served in the military?
Both my father, my father-in-law, my uncle, and I currently have a son that's in the military.
Oh, wow. Do you have any message to them?
Happy Veterans Day. Thank you for your service.
My brother-in-law served many years over in Iraq. Just thanks, grateful, appreciative of it.
I had all three of my uncles were in the military, and they all served their country. Two was in World War II, one was in the Korean War. You know, they're all deceased now, but they know that I love them and I looked up to them.
Do you have any message to the men and women who serve for the country?
For the people that served out there, even my sister, I know you faced a lot. Don't forget, people still love you.
Thank you, veterans, and thank you for our freedom.
In his speech at Arlington National Cemetery today, President Trump said, quote, "Our heroes have lived through unthinkable nightmares so we could live the American dream." To commemorate this holiday, we have two veterans joining us tonight. U.S. Navy SEAL veteran Mike Sorelli. He's the Chief Talent Officer at Overwatch Mission Critical. We also have with us U.S. Marine Corps and Army National Guard veteran John Burns. He's the Strategic Director at Concerned Veterans for America. Thank you both so much for joining us and for your service. Now, Mike, I hear it's also your birthday, so I'd like to start with you. Happy birthday, and as a veteran, what does Veterans Day mean to you?
You know, we've done a lot of interviews today about Veterans Day, and everyone goes to sacrifice these men and women have made. And that's true. As I said, that is sacred ground. But really, given the current times in the rise in American nationalism and American pride, and we're seeing the recruiting numbers go up, it's about continuity. And what I mean with that is every generation has produced men and women who raise their right hand to serve in the military, this unbroken chain of service through many generations. And so I remember being the young man looking at the World War II, Korean and Vietnam era veterans with just such esteem and wanting to be those men. And now I look at the next generation who's answering the call. And so I'm absolutely positive and optimistic about where we're heading as a nation, and that all it takes is a small minority of good men and women to answer the call and defend our freedoms. And I'm confident that we've got that for a generation to come.
And John, what's your reflection today on what does Veterans Day mean to you?
Well, you mentioned honor and sacrifice. Certainly, you know, veterans are a smaller and smaller cohort every year. It's great that we have a day to celebrate them. Like Mark, I remember being a young man, a school kid, and there were World War II veterans who were scoutmasters and teachers and, you know, Little League coaches. And we're losing that connection between the general public and veterans. Again, Mark pointed out kind of the family trade nature of service these days. It's fathers to sons, uncles to nephews. And that's getting smaller and smaller. It's becoming more a part of middle America, flyover country, the bitter clinger class versus the coastal elites who they're just not encouraging service, and they're not really connected to the things that folks like Mark and I go through sometimes. And Veterans Day is a great place to start, but I wish more of them would spend a little more time thinking about us the rest of the year.
And on that note, Mike, reflecting on what today means, what areas do you think civilians could learn more about to fully understand and appreciate those who serve?
That's a tough task, because naturally, you know, like this esteemed colleague here and myself, we raised our hands so civilians wouldn't have to go over there. And I don't think we want to describe what we went through and what we saw over there during the global war on terror, whatever war you fought in. That's something we try to hold close and sort of shield the American public from. And so we don't want to talk about the traumas of what happened over there, but, you know, it's hard to explain unless you have a family member who's in the service of what really it entails to be a service member, to know that you're potentially giving your safety at risk, your life for somebody you don't know. And the time away from family, It wasn't common or uncommon to be away from my family 300 days out of the year. And that's not even if I was deployed. So the sacrifice and time away from my two kids at the time, my wife at the time, the things that you don't get to participate in, the Christmas dinners, the New Year's Eve celebrations or Thanksgiving because you're gone, deployed overseas or training. It is a hard life. But that said, I wouldn't have traded it for the world because I was surrounded by men and women, the best of us, who, I watched selfless valor on a nightly basis when deployed. And I would not be the man who I am, nor my peers, if we didn't go through what is the greatest leadership incubator in the world, known as the U.S. military, regardless of what service you're in. It shapes you into a man or woman of character, driven by ethics. And that's why veterans who get out of the military go on to succeed in the private sector, because they know how to lead teams. They know how to lead people. They know how to lead with character and lead through love. And so it's very difficult to explain that to someone who's never served or been close to the military in some way.
And John, there is a sobering stat. In 2022, the VA data says that on average, there were 17 veteran suicides per day. What needs to be done to help our veterans, whether that's boosting mental health, assisting them with assimilating back into civilian life? What needs to be done?
Well, Concerned Veterans for America, the first thing we think is that if veterans are encouraged by the VA, if the VA actually helps assist them get care when and when they need it, instead of trying to force them into U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs facilities, that will drive better outcomes. Again, it comes down to, in a big way, connection to the civilian world as well. If civilians can connect better to veterans, in history, veterans were part of the community, right? All men went to war in smaller communities. As we got bigger and bigger, we got further and further disconnected from that. So that reconnection that Veterans Day starts with, it needs to happen. Kind of as Mike was highlighting, when you serve, you kind of separate yourself a little bit from one family, but you get a whole new family. And veterans are here for each other. Everyone I served with is like family. Every one of those losses is terrible. And I've lost a few to suicide since the global war on terror started. In fact, over the last almost 25 years now, we've lost almost 4 times as many military and veterans members, just the ones who served in this conflict, to suicide than we did overseas. So a lot more needs to be done. There's a mental health and suicide epidemic. And again, giving the VA the authority and the encouragement to send veterans out into the community would go a long way to helping end that.
And Mike, a 2024 Pew Research poll found that 60% of Americans have a favorable view of the military. Now, the youngest polled 18 to 29-year-olds had the lowest approval, less than half. Now, the Trump administration is working to reshape military culture, and we're seeing it reach enrollment milestones. Is there a relationship between Americans' appreciation of veterans and their attitudes toward the military?
There absolutely is. And that 60% confidence rate was the lowest it's ever been since the Clinton administration. And that was under the Biden administration. We've seen that rise, this rise in nationalism and American pride. Here's what it comes down to. Enlistment was so low during the Biden administration because why would you want to work for a boss who continued to denigrate the American way, our nation, and even denigrate the military in certain ways or through policies by enacting social experience on military culture, which is a clash. Military culture is different than civilian culture for a reason. But we've seen in 2025, the enlistments, in fact, every service exceeded their quota, which I called the Trump and Hegseth bump effect, because you've seen the Secretary of War come in and reestablish standards, accountability, and most importantly, the warrior ethos. We know why we exist, peace through strength. And if called, we will be the most lethal military in the world. And we know we don't want to be called. We're, as we say, in the profession of peace, trained in the art of war. So, we've got a president and a Secretary of War who believe in our troops. And as you hear Pete Hegseth often say, the president and him have the soldiers' backs. They feel that. And that's why I think we will see confidence in our military and enlistments go up.
And John, on that note, in your view, what more can be done to improve Americans' perspectives on the military?
I think, again, days like Veterans Day are a great start. I think seeing the military in action, seeing the military physically fit, seeing the military perform, seeing an administration, and I think this goes to recruiting too, seeing an administration and a Department of War that husbands those resources, that does what Mike just said, that doesn't go out seeking dragons to slay, but is interested only in the wars that we have to fight, something that the president was saying as far back as 2015. That will encourage folks to connect more with the military. The military remains still one of the most respected institutions in the country. It's usually number one or two. The respect is declining, as it is with all institutions, but that's a bigger cultural issue with institutions. The military is still on top of that. I think the new look of the military, the new take of the military, that they're there to provide excellence again. The demand for excellence among the top ranks, 3- and 4-star generals, either you excel or you get out, is something that's long overdue, and I think Americans know it. That there's nothing like seeing generals fail and get promoted to really dishearten the American public about where the military stands.
And Mike, lastly, how has your military service shaped your worldview?
I think the harsh realities of the world. You talk about peace through strength. What does that really mean? When you serve and go to third world countries that are war torn, they respect one thing, and that's strength. I've said it before. Osama bin Laden said, people see a strong horse and they see a weak horse, and they're naturally attracted to the strong horse. There's a reason the Russian-Ukraine war started during the Biden administration. We were a house divided. The military was degrading, and that was Putin's time to move. Had Trump been in office for a second term during that period, that would not have happened. At least that's what I believe. So, we have the best military in the world, technologically, the best fighting man and woman. And that's why I have confidence. And usually, despite whatever president's in office, they're going to get the job done. And that's the beauty. We will always get the mission done, even if it takes us to the last man. And again, I will say this to the youth: go serve. It will be the best of times. And even during the worst of times, you will have smiles on your face because you're surrounded by brothers and sisters in arms. And that is a beautiful thing. You can never replace those moments. And you will feel what true shared adversity is, and you will understand what it's like to truly be part of a tribe.
And John, same question to you. How has your military service shaped your worldview?
Aside from marriage, it's the most transformational event that ever took place in my life. I joined the military a little late. I was already in my 20s. I was, kind of a little bit of wanderlust. That first kind of manifested itself in not wanting to do anything really. But it went a little bit global, and I realized the military was a way to do it. My family has a long history of service in the military and a variety of police departments. I wanted to serve. I wanted my life to mean something. Joining the military was the first step in getting real meaning in my life. And I feel like with Concerned Veterans for America, I'm just carrying that over in a different organization full of veterans.
Well, John Burns, Mike Sorelli, thank you again both for joining us and for your service.
Happy Veterans Day.
Thanks.
And we have some breaking news. The Supreme Court has extended its block on a lower court order, which requires full November SNAP benefits be paid. This means the government won't be required to pay full benefits until at least after Thursday night. The program serves 42 million Americans. With the shutdown nearing an end, though, the case may soon be irrelevant. The Senate passed a bill to reopen the government, and the House could vote as early as tomorrow. Coming up, thousands of flights across the U.S. are still impacted by the FAA cancellations, with disruptions expected to continue even after the government shutdown ends. But the Transportation Secretary has some good news to share. And a celebration for veterans and active duty service members at Dodger Stadium, from meeting former players to getting a close look at the Dodgers' brand new World Series trophy. Christina Corona has that story after the break. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. It's day 5 since the FAA announced major flight cancellations across the U.S. amid the government shutdown. Airlines say that flight disruptions will continue even after the government reopens. NTD's David Lamb reports.
Amid the government shutdown, thousands of U.S. flights have been cut. Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy said Tuesday was better than Monday as more air traffic controllers reported to work. There were fewer staffing triggers, 4 on Tuesday compared to 81 on Saturday.
I think our air traffic controllers are seeing an end to the shutdown and feel more hopeful, and they're coming into their facilities. So we're grateful to them for all that they're doing.
24 to 48 hours after the government shutdown ends, controllers will get 70% back pay, and the remaining 30% will come about a week later.
So I encourage all of them to come to work, to be patriots, and help navigate the airspace effectively for the American people.
Airlines are expected to cancel 6% of their flights at 40 busy airports Tuesday. This after the FAA mandated the reductions over safety concerns. According to the flight tracking website FlightAware, there were more than 1,200 cancellations within, into, or out of the United States, and more than 3,000 U.S. flights were delayed. Some of the affected airports are in major cities such as Chicago, the New York area, and Washington, D.C. Duffy said the 6% flight reduction may be removed depending on whether air traffic controllers return to work. He said they are still 2,000 controllers short and will be dealing with it for a long time. David Lamb, NTD News.
Hundreds of service members and veterans honored today at Dodger Stadium for Veterans Day. The Los Angeles Dodgers welcomed them and their families for a special celebration. NTD's Christina Corona tells us more from the baseball field.
We're here at Dodger Stadium where the World Series champion Dodgers are honoring those who served with a very special Veterans Day celebration.
Around 350 pre-selected active duty service members and veterans, along with their families, are getting the full Dodger experience, taking batting practice, playing catch right on the field, and touring the ballpark.
It's amazing. First time on the field, first time fielding a ball. Also, same thing. Yeah, first time hitting on the field. I mean, this is a dream come true.
Coming off the Dodgers' World Series win, veterans even got to take a picture with the brand new trophy alongside former Dodgers pitcher Oral Hershiser.
Yeah, we took a picture with the trophy. Yeah, we got a couple in there. Couldn't touch it though. Yeah.
Veterans can also visit a resource fair offering services and support for them and their families. Working Dogs for Warriors is a program that helps veterans and first responders cope with post-traumatic stress caused by difficult events or calls for service.
Working Dogs for Warriors is a program to help train us to train the service dogs to help with PTSD mainly, but other disabilities also that the first responders and veterans are afflicted with.
Jean McAllister has had her service dog, Bjorn, since he was just 8 weeks old. He's now 2 years old, and she shares how much he has helped her.
Working Dogs for Warriors has helped me and many of my friends and coworkers with the resources that they need. Service dogs are great resources for veterans. He's just the best companion for me.
And what Veterans Day means to them.
Just a day to recognize everyone who sacrificed and served, not necessarily the people who had died in service, which is typically Memorial Day, but veterans today just to come together and celebrate the sacrifices we have already made. And I mean, a lot of camaraderie out here.
Organizers say it's just one small way the franchise is giving back to those who give so much. Reporting from third base at Dodger Stadium, Christina Corona, NTD News.
And that's all for today's news. For round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.